Three, two, one, action. Welcome back to a special half episode of As Seen on Screen. I'm Gracie.
And I'm Nicole, and we're your source for entertainment news, reviews, conversations, and more.
You can find us wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts on Spotify and YouTube.
Well, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us for a second time this week. We're happy to be joining you twice in 1 week. We have a special conversation today with Kyle Hausmann-Stokes, the writer and director of the upcoming film My Dead Friend Zoe. And let us be, if you haven't heard about this film, let us be the first people to tell you that you need to go see this film. We are practically begging you because it is such an incredible film filled with an incredible cast,
Mhm.
performances, so many great messages and themes that are explored in this film, and we so enjoyed our conversation with Kyle. So definitely, please check this out in theaters when it comes out next Friday, February 28th.
For those of you who haven't heard about the film yet, My Dead Friend Zoe follows Merritt, who is a US veteran who keeps seeing the presence of her friend Zoe, who unfortunately died. When her estranged grandfather is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, she decides to become his caretaker while also trying to heal herself.
We hope you enjoy our conversation with Kyle. Well, we just want to start off by saying congratulations on this film. Also, it's your feature directorial debut, so congratulations. Both Gracie and I had such similar reactions to this when we were watching it. We're in different countries, so we were texting each other, but we were saying how much we loved it and how funny it was,
Great.
how moving it was, crying at the same part. So just huge
Ah,
congratulations.
that warms my heart. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to start off by obviously saying congratulations, like Nicole said, but this film had a fantastic festival run. I know it started off at South by Southwest. You took home the Audience Award, and now obviously we're approaching the North American release date. So, what has it been like getting to see audiences' reactions to this? And what kind of response have you received from fellow veterans about this film? Have there been any specifically that have surprised you or stuck with you?
I have so many stories to say, things to say about this. Yes. Seeing audiences react to any person's film is a surreal experience. It's just this little weird idea you have, and you're just typing on your computer, and then all of a sudden it's a real thing, and people are responding to it. So that inherently is just, again, I just keep using the word surreal, but specifically the way seeing people respond to this film because it's so personal to me. It's so much of this film is autobiographical that it's been so universal has been really incredible. I mean, I worked hard at that to make this kind of, half my story, but then half other people's story, which is kind of why I chose to cast women instead of myself. So much of the film is true, but certain aspects I wanted to leave it open for others to have it be their story as well. Um, people corner me after the film, after every screening, wanting to talk about it, share their story. Um, and veterans in particular, just a couple, like there was one Vietnam veteran at South by Southwest who came up, quiet, stoic, older guy, said, he said, I don't talk about it, but I saw the film and I think maybe now I'll talk about it, pretty powerful. There was like a big kind of Southern guy, that somebody might say is very seen, looks conservative or that kind of type came down, very emotional, so touched by even the fact that it was women. He was a Marine portraying us, and just goes to show that this film is like purple and apolitical, and it's the same for everybody. And then in Italy, we had an amazing run overseas as well, in Amsterdam and we had Torino Film Festival. Italians that just waited for me in the alleyway after, and said that they couldn't believe that they were saying this, but that they've never empathized with Americans and American veterans as much as they had after seeing the film. So a lot of really special, and those are just a handful of stories, but it's been amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's
That's
wonderful.
incredible. I wanted to follow a bit on something you were just talking about there a little bit, obviously, with this being partially based on your own experiences and relationships. When you were writing this, how did you balance what you wanted to incorporate from your own life and how much you wanted to fictionalize about it and add into that story, like you were saying?
I think it really started from a place of just truth, and that's kind of sometimes the easiest things to write when you just spill your guts and open a vein. And because I don't know, it's hard to quantify these things, but I've been saying now that this film is 93% autobiographical. My grandfather, the folding chair, the music in the park, their pontoon boat, the lake house, his, early onset and Alzheimer's, my even the phone call that Merritt gets. I remember where I was sitting when I got that call, and I missed that call. So much of it is true. You know, Ed Harris plays my grandfather. Morgan Freeman plays a VA counselor that was important to me. All of these things. So I started from that as a base, but then I ultimately wanted to make kind of like we were talking about before, like a universal film, but also one that was just entertaining. And I actually used to work for Judd Apatow's manager. And at one point, Judd had a conversation with me asking me, he's like, "Hey, Kyle, are you guys funny? Veterans, are you funny?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're fucking funny. And he's like, "Well, how come I never see that in films?" I'm like, "Yeah, good point. Why don't we?" And so actually, Judd kind of planted the seed to ensure that we've had enough Debbie Downer, PTSD McGee stories out there. And I don't mean to diminish it because I've lived it myself, but we all know that story. And so I guess I just knew that a lot of the film was going to be true and a lot of gravity, but there just needed to be levity. So I kept the windows open, so to speak. And even on the last draft of the script, I wrote the script by myself for 2 years. I rewrote it 4 or 5 times. Version 32, I think, is the one that we shot. But the last draft, I worked with this amazing woman named AJ Bermudez, credible writer, and I showed her everything I had. And I'm like, "This is it." We put it on the wall and note cards, and we kind of blew it up and then put it back together. But then allowing for her voice as a female voice, and then even on set, I just was not precious about the words. And so the actors would come in with ideas, lines, what if this, what if that. Our cinematographer has personal experience with Alzheimer's in his family, came up with scenes. And so I don't know, I just wanted to make it a team sport.
Definitely. And you brought this up a little bit there, but Hollywood has had very mixed success with portraying veteran experiences in film. So I'm wondering for you personally, how does this film change or redefine that kind of Hollywood standard? And what are you hoping change-wise is made to Hollywood now having a truthful yet funny story?
Man, I love that question. Thank you. Um, I hope that this film will allow not only Hollywood, but just Americans and Canadians and people around the world to just, I think people know this, but to really know and appreciate that veterans are just like everybody else. Yeah, we had a weird job that had some kind of weird requirements to it. And yes, of course, we are different based on our job. Why it'd be weird if we weren't, but that is the same for ER doctors or nurses or teachers or, and any other thing like that. And so I think I wanted to portray, or I want Hollywood to know that we veterans we're not like we're not a sad story, and we're not like victims of our experience. We're kind of better for them. We're stronger for them. I like this expression that scar tissue is stronger than skin. And in particular, the veterans group in the film, where Morgan Freeman is the VA counselor. I wrote that scene very specifically, and the script says, this is a veterans group made up of high functioning members of society. There's a teacher, there's a business guy who wants to be a comedian. There's a doctor, there's a teacher, there's an artist. And so it's like it's the best of what the society has to offer. And these people just happen to be veterans. It's not all who they are.
Definitely. Hopefully we'll see that change soon in Hollywood.
Totally. And it's funny, sometimes Hollywood or writers are like, "Yeah, but how do you tell someone that they're a veteran?" Or, "I don't know how to weave that into the story." And it's just like you have them say, "When I was in the army," and that's it. It's done. They're a veteran. They're an investigator. They're a lawyer. They're in a love story, whatever it is. But the fact that they had served, great. They're a veteran. Moving on. And now let's get back to our story. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk with you a bit about one of my favorite scenes was definitely the 4th of July picnic, especially where we see Dale and Merritt standing at that one point for their troop song. earlier in the film, we had heard Dale tell Merritt that story about when he got back to the SFO airport and he went and changed out of his gear because he was receiving basically hate for it. And so for me, the 4th of July scene kind of broke down those walls and peeked into those generational barriers and differences that we see those two characters go through in their experiences and what they've gone through as veterans. So I was hoping you could talk a bit more about how you wanted this film to break stereotypes and stigmas around the realities that veterans face now and then also in the past.
Man, you guys have the best questions. Thank you for calling that scene out, Nicole. That's actually my favorite scene in the film. It's so personal because it's basically the reason I joined the military. You know, every 4th of July, my family go to this small town by where my grandparents live in northern Wisconsin, and there would be music in the park, and they would play the Army's fight song, and my grandpa would, push himself out of his chair, and he's a very humble, stoic guy, and there was so much power there, and other veterans in the park, and so that was really special for me. That film is almost like a documentary, or that scene is like a documentary for me because it's just real. Um, maybe my grandpa wasn't perfectly backlit by the failing sun. I made, that was a cinematography thing, but that's how emotional it felt. And yeah, what I was hoping to do in terms of dispelling these stigmas is just to kind of highlight this idea that we veterans are not a monolith. And anybody who comes from a certain group, you could be a any kind of minority group where you're not the normal thing. Less than 1% of the U.S. has actively served in the military, so it's getting smaller and smaller. I'm not quite sure in Canada, but I imagine it's similar. Um, that we're different. We're similar, but also different. And like, I had an amazing homecoming from war. People said thank you for your service, and they knew that we soldiers were not the war, that we were not the government or policy. But my grandfather didn't have that experience, as you called out from that story, and that's verbatim. And so I wanted to explore that schism between two different generations of veterans. And I hope that we can, yeah, break down some of those barriers to understand that just because you wore a pickle suit and had a funny haircut for X amount of years doesn't mean that every person's experience is the same. And I really just hope after people see this film, there's a couple things I want to happen, but one of them is that if you have a veteran in your life, in your family, as a friend, something like that, that you might be like, man, I just saw this film about veterans. So interesting. What did you do? I'm so curious. Like, do you have any funny stories? Do you have any sad stories? Like, I want to kind of take you to lunch, kind of hear about it. Like, that's pretty cool. I think it could, as a conversation starter, it could really make a difference. Yeah.
Absolutely.
One thing I have to bring up about this is in the press release, it said that 90% of the cast were actually veterans. What was the casting process like for you, and why was it so important for you to get people who have that experience and get them on the screen?
Another great question. Yes. And you guys saw the film, so you saw in the end credits all of the veterans and photos of them serving. I would say it was important for me to again, we vets don't often get to make our own films, especially don't get to sit in the director's chair. Other than Oliver Stone, there's, you know, back in the day, post World War II, a lot of those directors were veterans, but since Oliver Stone, there's very few. And then also just in terms of the actors. And so I knew that I wanted to incorporate as many of my fellow vets as possible, but they had to earn it. Um, they 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 had to audition as actors first, and it's just the fact that they were veterans was a secondary thing. But yeah, everybody in that group, in that therapy group, including Mr. Morgan Freeman, are real veterans. And it was also helpful or intentional for me to surround Sonequa and Natalie with real veterans so that in between takes and things like that, they would be kind of by osmosis, sucking up that experience.
Yeah. This whole cast was so incredible. Like just watching this entire movie, I kept thinking, I can't remember the last time I watched a film and I was blown away by everybody in this cast. And so they all just put on such an amazing performance. So
Uh,
kudos definitely to everyone involved for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, obviously Morgan and Ed are legends, complete legends. And Sonequa and Natalie, I've been fans of theirs for so long, but I feel like now people are really going to get to see them in a new and different light. But then also like Utkarsh Ambudkar, who I think people know from ghosts. And I fell in love with him from Brittany Runs a Marathon, and then also Gloria Reuben, who I grew up with on ER, and Lincoln, and so many, Mr. Robot. And so yeah, I mean, casting is like, I believe in the thing where you just do the work casting, and then just get out of the way and just let them do their thing. And so yeah,
Yeah,
I was lucky to have them.
absolutely. Well, I know we're running out of time here, so we just want to say thank you so much for sharing it
Yeah,
with us, Kyle, and sharing this film with us. We can't wait to share it with our audience on our show, and I hope so many people see this amazing film.
we've got this super cool pay it forward campaign. So via our nonprofit, when people see the movie in theaters, there's a QR code, there's a special message in the end credits from my cast and me. People can, like, if they want to help, they can literally scan a QR code and they can help pay for a ticket for a veteran or for someone else or for community screening. So we're trying to, like, yeah, we're just trying to break the system a little bit and, show Hollywood that people want to see films like this. So if we can get people into theaters, that's help us a ton. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. We'll definitely share that as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
A big thank you again to Route 504 PR for setting this up and giving us screeners. We both absolutely love this movie. It's so important. Highly recommend you go see it. We also hope you enjoyed the interview. I know we both had a great time getting to talk further about this film and hear what went into it.
Absolutely. So thank you so much again for tuning in to this episode of As Seen on Screen. Another big thank you to Kyle and this whole team. And please go see My Dead Friend Zoe in theaters on February 28th. I'm Nicole,
And I'm Gracie.
and we will see you next Thursday at 10 a.m. Until then, bye.